All right, you should have a live video stream.
Okay. Yep.
All right, here we go.
Todd and Rob in the afternoon.
Hey, afternoon delight.
With Todd and Rob. Oh, yeah.
Here we are. We're here for another edition of the New Media Show after I was off last week, or we are off last week because I was in Phoenix. So actually coming back from Phoenix when the show was supposed to go on. And so here we are, Rob. Welcome back.
Yeah. Yeah. I've done that same event that you went to, the Alliances.
Yeah. So it was fun. It was good. Interesting.
I've done it a couple of times. Yeah.
It felt kind of Tony Robinson type almost a little bit. It was, it wasn't quite that, but it was good. Lots of good networking, lots of good contacts that I'm still working through.
Yeah.
So, and anyway,
terrific.
for those of you who don't know, it was basically an event where it was a bunch of business folks networking and such. So I haven't asked to apply for membership per se. I don't even know how much that costs, but they were nice enough to ask me to come out, and I got a little bit of time to pitch.
That's what I was going to say. It goes by pretty quick, doesn't it? So you got to get to the point.
Yeah, I was fast and furious, and being a podcaster, you're able to do that. But it was, I was the only podcaster in the house, that's for sure.
Oh,
but lots of money in that building, lots of rich and famous folks, and lots of VCs, and so it was good. It was fun. But here we are. We're back, and of course we're live and lit. So if you're not already playing with one of those newfangled modern podcasting apps at podcastapps.com, please do so. Today, obviously, we are in a value for value situation. So if you value our content, please consider supporting the show. And of course, you can always boost us when you're live. I did miss a boost. I have to go back because let me look. Yeah, I don't see it. I thought there was a boost. It had come in from Dave, but I think I've read all these. So, but if you've got anything comment today about being, well, if you're using one of those newfangled apps, feel free to hit us up, ping us while we're live. And of course, we had the official announcement comes tomorrow morning, but we relaunched Podcast Mirror silently.
I saw that
yesterday. And so all the blog posts went out this morning, and then the press release goes out tomorrow. But we basically enabled podcasting 2.0 for anyone that is on I'm calling them non-compliant. Now, how can I use this? This is going to piss some people off. So if you are part of a non-compliant podcasting host,
which are most of them,
that are not certified by the podcast. Oh, maybe you should talk about that. The PSP.
Well, right.
Then you can have a compliant podcasting feed with the Podcast Mirror. So, and participate. You can go live and lit. You can do value for value. You can set the medium tag. The only thing we can't do is these are all channel level settings. I don't have the ability yet to make any inroads on items, aka post, because that would require a much more sophisticated intervention. And that's what we do. We intervene in the feed. We take the podcast. The way Podcast Mirror works is takes your feed and makes an absolute duplicate mirror of it.
Right.
And
that's what the term Podcast Mirror stands for. Right.
And it will doesn't change anything if you don't touch any of the settings. And then you have the ability to now you can set these podcasting 2.0 features, and we will add that to your feed. So it's Mirror Plus, I guess, a better way to say it. And
so how does a podcaster take advantage of the 2.0 specs? Is it in your back end? Is that how they do that?
Yeah, it's in our back end on Podcast Mirror. So they add the value for value stuff. But again, it's only at the channel level. They can't use any of the episode level stuff. So it's again, it's it gets it with the feed that we tested it on was an Anchor or Spotify feed that has none of these features.
Formerly known as Anchor, yes.
And still has all the Anchor markings in the feed, but we took an Anchor feed and we tested by adding basically anyone that's on Anchor or Libsyn or Podbean, any of those other platforms that have non-compliant feeds, they can now participate in the podcasting 2.0 space. So a jab in your eye, a little jab in your eye out there. Arr, arr.
Well, it does give podcasters that want to embrace the new standard a pathway for doing that.
Yep.
That's setting a good example, I guess, for other hosts that could, do the same. And maybe, so what would happen here is kind of similar to what we saw in the early days with FeedBurner, right? It's kind of a similar type of a platform.
It was, right? It really was designed. We built it for podcasters. FeedBurner was built for bloggers, and it worked for podcasters. But over the years they've done nothing with it. So, and podcast.
So it also means that if you want to change hosts or whatever you want to do, you can just change it in the back end of Podcast Mirror and not have to, do anything really with your host.
Yeah.
If you don't want to.
You just change the source. Now, it's not the most clean way to change hosts, because what we're going to do is, if you didn't migrate from one host to the other cleanly and move over those posts from before and carry over the GUIDs, then you could have an event where all your media is re-downloaded again. But the key is, if you carry over the GUID and you migrate from one host to the other, Mirror will pick up those. It won't replace the GUIDs, and you'll be able to have a clean transition. It's actually easier than doing a 301 because you just
that's what you're actually not having to do. Is
you don't have to do a 301, because that
it's still going to require you to transfer and duplicate all your RSS feeds over on the new host.
On the new host, but it's it used to be free. It's been free since 2017. And we're charged $60 a year for existing customers. Get the first year at 50, then it goes to 60, but $5 a month, and literally that site is used by thousands. There is a lot of shows over there that use it. So I'm sure some are not going to be happy, and they can easily redirect off the platform. We basically one button click, and here's the feed to redirect to. But we always have this big caution there. Don't redirect to the feed that is currently being pointed at without removing the redirect on the feed that you're currently, if you're redirecting a feed, which some people do. You don't have to, but we tell them don't. If you've redirected a feed to Podcast Mirror, make sure you take off that redirect before you redirect back to the original feed, or it'll do a loop-de-loop, and it won't be good. So... but most folks, they won't even have to they just redirect back to their source feed. So it's all managed right on the site. It's easy to take care of, and you can quit at any time. So not too many pushback yet. So we'll see when we send the mass email tomorrow to several thousand of the users and say, hey, we're looking to put our hand in your pocket for $60 a year. Versus free. So, but we try to add some value, and hopefully that it's good. You got a comment on YouTube. Bang says, hey peeps, thoughts on the passage of the UK online safety bill? To be honest with you, I haven't really followed it. Have you, Rob?
No. Does that have to do with kind of hate speech? Is that what it would be in regards to that? Seems to be the hot topic right now.
I don't know. I'm going to have to
in the EU.
I'll have to look at it. I know they just whammied TikTok $386 million or some, but this is a UK. Thoughts on this is a UK. This is not EU, but the EU did a big Wanger on TikTok for 387 million for signing up minors. So I guess we're just gonna have to send the legal over there and read the bill. So I don't have
Fine
any
print.
real feedback.
Right.
But we did have some stuff hitting us on Twitter where people are asking us about our opinions on YouTube. Basically, there's some guy I don't follow this. Let me see. Let me get to the comments so I can actually talk authoritatively here. There's a the mention was Gatekeeper Vimeo censored a children trans documentary film. I have nothing to know about this, but I guess Venmo took that down. Film is an art form. It should never be silenced. Again, Venmo's in business. They can, it's their choice on what content they want on their system. So I really don't have an opinion on that. But this Russell Brand have you heard this name? He's gotten in trouble. He's got something.
Oh, he's a long time podcaster in the podcasting space. He had an exclusive contract with Audio Boom for many years. And he's like a movie star kind of comedian and stuff like that. And he's built a huge following on YouTube and as well as on Rumble.
I guess he's
multi-millions of people are listening to him.
Someone said that his channel was
demonetized.
Is he in trouble for something?
I guess he's under investigation for some sort of a sexual assault or something like that he's being accused of. He hasn't been convicted of anything, there's an
accusation out there.
There's an accusation, and YouTube took him down because of an accusation.
Well, the question is, and this is the thing,
not took him down, but demonetized him.
So did YouTube demonetize him, or did the advertisers unplug from him?
I don't know that distinction has been made. The only thing that's been said is that YouTube basically pulled the plug on his monetization support in the platform. They haven't come out and saying that certain advertisers have pulled out of advertising or something like that, because it doesn't usually work that way.
Usually the YouTube says you can't. You're no longer monetized. So that's what happened there.
And I think, frankly, this was like, I think for him probably it was a straw that broke the camel's back with YouTube, because I think he's been given many kind of content strikes over the many years that he's been doing a show and building a huge following. And so, there's, at some point when something breaks, that like gives them that one little edge that they need to
flip the switch.
Right.
So, and again, that basically the Twitter follower that sent us this says that it's what you and I and others have been warning about forever. Gatekeepers control it. And
it's part of this bigger conversation around content moderation.
Right.
Now, granted, we're talking about YouTube, so that's kind of like a foregone conclusion that's been going on.
I
think most of our conversation has been centered around this kind of moderation coming to podcasting. Which is a different conversation to some degree.
So again, I really don't have, again, Venmo or Vimeo or however you pronounce them, Vimeo, Vimeo. That, I think you have to pay to use that platform. So it's one of those situations.
Yeah, Venmo is like a PayPal. It's like a payment platform. Right.
Vimeo. Oh.
Or is it Vimeo?
Vimeo, Vimeo. So they're an online streaming. They're similar to YouTube. Video streaming platform.
Right.
So
they've been around since.
Yeah, been forever.
Just after YouTube launched, actually, they've been around a long time. Yeah.
So that platform, if I remember correctly, now is mostly paid. They had bought Livestream.
It's all paid. Yeah.
And we actually stream on Livestream as well. Many people don't know that, but this show's streamed on Livestream as well. But if I pay to have our show streamed on Livestream. I think I pay about $600 a year for that. This show, Geek News Central, a couple of others that are part of the Tech Podcast Network use that same stream on Livestream. We have different channels. But, again, this is a platform that they can choose who and what type of content they want on there. And again, I'm not one to tell someone what they can do with their business model. But again, you're on a platform that you have paid for, that is, or someone has paid for that content to be up there. And if you violate their terms of service, or they don't like doing business with you, most companies have this ability to say, you're out, you're gone. We don't want the content, whatever it may be, to be associated with. Now,
yeah, it depends on the specificity of the terms of service,
right?
That you agreed to.
And
right.
I'm not going to guess. I'm not going to question if Spotify, if Vimeo, if YouTube, and I don't question if they want to remove content. I just warn people that they can.
That can happen, right?
And if you as a content creator are going to have content that you are concerned about being deplatformed, then having your show on an RSS feed, you can still be deplatformed from all the major distribution points in podcasting. That's happened already to a show or two. I think just one, real primarily. But
there's been a handful of them.
Yeah, but you again,
not that many, actually.
The RSS piece of this allows the show to remain online, and people can still, those that choose, can still follow and subscribe to your show manually. It doesn't stop that. So again, I can have a personal opinion on what these sites do. And oftentimes I do. I'm not going to air it, but at the same time, I think that, Blueberries, we've had a issue with a gambling site. And we believe, and from everything that we've been made to understand, is that gambling site's trying to defraud people. So they've come back 2 or 3 times to try to reestablish their account. We said, no, we refuse to do business with you. And
isn't gambling by its very nature a form of fraud?
Well, again, if it was,
I think it is.
I think the key here is
no, I know.
Gambling shows and stuff like that. But what they were trying to do was set up a website that basically was trying to defraud people of their money. They weren't a real organization.
Right.
I mean, they weren't U.S. based at all. They were overseas, and we reviewed and everything we got back was this. They're just trying to steal money. So, and it had been reported. It wasn't like we went looking for it. It had been reported as an issue site. So, we said, okay, no, we don't want your business. Matter of fact, they weren't even publishing a podcast. So that was kind of the funny thing too. So again, we all have our terms of service of what we allow within our platforms. And, anything that's going to, for our opinion, is if you're trying to defraud someone and being blatant about it and running, links that go to honeypots that are do nothing more than try to get people to give up their money and lose it forever, we're not having it, right? It would be, and it was reported to us, and why would we leave that up and then cause, we'd be just as much to blame if we knew this site was a fraud and left it up. Yeah. So it wasn't necessarily, it was their actions. It wasn't their content.
Yeah. And speaking of this topic, Cast Media has been in the news about their lack of payment to content creators.
Man, 2 YouTube videos. I didn't watch the second one, but
Yeah. Yeah. I thought that was, and this is an interesting kind of sign of what's kind of been going on kind of behind the scenes that a lot of people haven't been talking about. And it's interesting that these kind of things are finally coming out. And I think that they're really rooted in the same issue primarily. One of the primary issues is fraud, but
right.
Above that, it's the issue of guarantees. Right?
Yeah.
And exclusives and those kind of things, which is one of those areas that the industry is completely pulling back from. And what we're seeing happen here is a great example of why they're not good deals to get into for anyone involved, actually. But a lot of the bigger media companies have been pushing for this, and that's primarily where it's happened. But then it's been increasingly felt by smaller companies that have felt like they had to compete with that in order to compete with the bigger companies and the ones that typically had deeper pockets that this isn't going to happen to. But the smaller companies that have adopted these guarantees, sticking their neck out saying, well, this is what it appears the revenue is going to be from this show. And, we'll be able to pay it.
Right. And they don't.
And then in the end, it doesn't, because the economy drops and advertising revenue declines. And guess what? They're in the hole.
Speak of a whammy, look at this one. Courtside Group. Yeah.
So that's the name that they went public with, was Courtside.
Hang on here. No. Maybe this is the wrong one.
Well, that's.
Let me come back, because it's P1 or something like that. Let me go. Let me make sure I got the.
But Courtside was the legal name.
It's Pod C.
One.
It's Pod C is the NASDAQ listing. I got the right one.
Right, but Courtside Group was the parent company of Podcast One back when I was working for them.
So $8 was it was supposed to open it. It was supposed to open at 8.
Yeah.
224. Now think about this. So this wasn't a traditional opening. They basically, all the people that got the stock were the ones that said, okay, you get it at $5. You can buy it at $5. And you as an employee can get it at $3.75 or whatever it is. And there was probably preconditions on how long they had to hold and sell. And, there are all kinds of things. And so we're going to open this thing at 8. $2.24 closed today, or $2.30.
So what was that peak high there?
A peak high was $2.56. Let's look at the 1 month average here. So when it did actually open, it opened at $4.39, and this is why it took and they actually did a bunch of stops. They stopped it a couple of times to try to prevent the slide, but it opened at $4.39, and now it's down around $2.30. Now, and again, this is Todd's opinion. This is Todd's opinion. This is perfect example of how Podcast One counts. In my opinion. Said, hey, we're going to open at 8. It's worth 8.
But you're only going to get 2. So, right.
The market said it's worth 230.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's about 2 times 2, 4. Yeah, about
so
right.
Are you taking this perspective from the podcaster and the advertiser?
I'm taking this from the podcaster counting perspective. Again, this is Todd's opinion.
Right.
All right.
Opinion.
My opinion.
It's not a disparaging.
No, it's just interesting.
Right. Yeah. Correct.
Wow. 230.
Well,
and here's the challenge. So there's people that are again, I'm just talking. In my opinion, there is likely, I'm not saying there is likely people holding stock at a much higher price that are now screwed. Yeah. And now
totally in the hole.
In the hole. And maybe they got stock for some sort of contract. Maybe they got hey, you're going to get some stock. We're going to give you stock for you to be with us for a year. Sign here, and you get it at the discount price of $5 from the opening at 8. And maybe they really haven't lost real money, but they maybe have lost. Okay, I was expecting 8. This is at 5. Now it's at 2.5. So, it's a quarter of what I was thinking it was going to be. And now, they're going to have to work hard. It's going to take a couple of years to get this back up to $5-6 range if they are ever able to.
So did they share in this granted equity request how much money was raised from the offering?
I don't think they raised money. This is the thing. I don't think they did. They did.
That's the only reason to do it.
Well, unless they distributed it all internally. Again, I don't know. They had some banks or whatever. I don't know. I don't know what the number is. I'm not a stock analyst.
It doesn't say.
Someone that knows this can send this to us and say, okay, Todd, this is how much they got. And but
because they usually have a certain amount of shares that are offered to the investors,
Right.
that can buy those shares at, whether it be $4 a share or $3 a share, some sort of discounted price.
I was hearing that this was not like a traditional raise money thing. That's what I heard. So, but again, I know I'm clueless when it comes to this thing. Don't take any stock advice from me. Zero. But
and I'm looking at the actual release itself, and it doesn't give any kind of what the initial private offering was.
Yeah, they say the market cap is 52.69 million is what the market cap is on this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now here's the interesting thing. This chart looks a lot like Libsyn's chart when they were public.
Right.
Except there was some spikes over the years where, in my opinion, a certain individual was pumping and dumping. In my opinion, but it's interesting that the stock is down at this low.
Well, I mean, there's a good chance that all the employees of the company that had shares dispersed to them are probably doing okay.
Yeah, it's the price is probably lower than what it was because they probably didn't cost them anything for those shares. Maybe bonuses.
They had a strike price.
Right.
So there's all sorts of ways that one can slice and dice this. But let's be honest, this wasn't exactly the best time in the economy to be taking any company public.
Well, people are always, podcasting is supposed to be hot, right? We're supposed to be getting towards $2 billion or something like that.
Is it really that hot, Todd?
Yeah,
I don't know that it is that hot right now.
That's the word on the street is everything's super hot. Hot.
Is that because that's what we want it to be, or is it because it actually is?
I'm just reporting what's being reported by other people publicly. It's hot.
It's super hot, yeah. And it is from a listener perspective. It's hot.
Yeah, it is absolutely.
From if you kind of back up a little bit and you look at Sony Music doesn't feel like it's so hot.
No, but it's right. But here's the thing too that I we're sitting here kind of digging a little bit, but I never want to see stock prices go negative. I want to see people be successful. I want to see them make a lot of money. I want to see people enriched. I want to see their pockets full of $100 bill stacks. We really want that. Honestly, I do. I want people to be successful. I want them to get rich on podcasting if they can. That's the end goal. Some people. Okay, it's a
slippery slope to say you want people to get rich.
Well, I think
it's a different matter of people wanting to make a living,
right?
Have a reasonable return on their
absolutely. And
their investments.
And if someone has a good idea, starts a great business, and builds it to maturity, and has an exit, I'm happy for people that do that. They get an exit, and put some extra dollars in their pocket. That to me is, and if a show is successful, it grows a show, grows an audience, whatever way they monetize V for V, advertising, whatever it may be, whatever way they're successful, I'm happy for them. I really don't like people to see failure. I don't. But it's just. Some things are kind of ironic.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because, honestly, I could have been along on that ride if things had changed years ago. I could have been part of that slide. Maybe if I was still around. If we'd have got bought, who knows? But it is a curious time.
Different. I've been through that too. I've been with companies that I worked at for a while, and then I left, and they went public, or they had a big fundraise, or they sold to another company or something like that, and I was gone. So
2,112 sats from Dave Jones. Game changer, Todd. We've been asked to do this numerous times, but always said no. This is always something that hosting companies should be doing, not us. About Podcast Smear. Dave also said, hey, Podbean actually declares the namespace, but I only think they support a couple of tags so far. Oh, okay. That's good if they do. So, again, and it's not a lot. I think we did 8 tags, channel level. So Again, it gives anyone.
That's actually most of the tags, isn't it?
No. There's more. Again, where we're missing though is, again, I can't do item. Some of the really, really cool stuff that's happening right now is happening at the item level. Value timestamps. There'll be some more we can add, but basically, here's the deal. I'm going to watch adoption. And if we get enough adoption on Podcast Mirror where people are using 2.0 tags or features, then I'll start to invest more money in it. Maybe we'll do some, because it's going to be tricky. Because if to inject something into an episode level item, that's a whole nother level of magic. That's a whole nother level of magic that we'd have to do. Another 2112 from Dave. The problem is that exit became the goal when Spotify came in and threw $2 billion around the room. The product itself got lost. Some people did. Some people got lost. The rest of us have been sitting in here and digging in the trenches and, digging ditches. We've been busy, building things. So, yeah, and to be honest with you, you look at that exit that the Anchor had. They were out of money. They were gasping for air, and they got that Hail Mary of $100+ million, whatever it was, and it came within this close of being gone. And
that's what happens when you build a business without any kind of monetization or business model.
And I've told this story already. I was with the Spotify group a few months later, and I'm like, who sold you this bill of goods? Why did you, why and I said it to him. I said, why in the world would you have spent this much money on that property? And oftentimes, and Dave, maybe you probably know this, and we're talking to Dave Jones who's listening, maybe there's always investors are always looking to scratch other investors' backs. It's almost like this quid pro quo. It's almost like, okay, company X, Y, and Z have invested in this, and they're looking for an exit, and we want them to be friends. And, then the exit price gets exaggerated because it's almost kind of that type of a thing. I feel, maybe not, but I want the person that negotiated a deal for Anchor on my team. I want that guy negotiating my exit if I ever get to that point, because holy crap, talk about a multiple that was off the chart. That's whatever, if someone's willing to pay that kind of money, I'll take their cash any day of the week. Come to me with $100 million. I'll retire. But so
yeah, it's interesting what has happened to that brand. It had a big impact on podcasting. There's no question about that.
It's still gaining a lot of shows.
Yeah,
but
it's not growing as fast as it was in the early days.
We had, they've convoluted the one of our support guys, and maybe I shouldn't say this, but someone said, I want my video on Anchor. And we're like, they will not take an RSS. They want their video on Spotify. And we keep saying, they will not take our video feeds. The only way you can get video on Spotify is you have to go direct.
You have to directly upload it.
You have
like
to go
YouTube.
over there direct.
Right.
And that's the only way you can get it there. And they're like, why? You're on pass-through. Well, yes, they'll take our audio, but they won't take our video. It's the carrot that says, hey, come on over here. They could very easily take our video feeds.
Right.
Tomorrow. They could flip the switch. They could take it tomorrow. But they won't, because
it would probably take some development on their side to support that.
Nah. If they can take in video now, why it wouldn't be a lift. They could do it if they wanted to. They don't. It's a marketing ploy.
Yeah.
The only way you get your video over here is you come over and you host over here.
Plus, the honest answer to that is that most people in the industry don't view video RSS feeds as much of a play anymore, too.
That's true.
So, which kind of a little bit leads into the
kind
of the next topic that we
juicy
want
one.
to maybe talk a little bit about. I mean, I'm not here to just kind of give kind of a bad talk to an article that came out necessarily, but just want to clarify some things, because I think this article I'm talking about is one that was written by Stephen Goldstein, and I totally appreciate Steve. He's my neighbor here in Connecticut, and I think he does a lot of good things for the podcasting industry. I think he hosts some great panels and talks about podcasting and stuff. But he put this article out just the last couple of days. It's called The 3 Eras of Podcasting. And I guess I was a little surprised, but maybe in some ways, maybe I shouldn't. But he's now teaching a course at the university in New York City called NYU on the business of podcasting. So he's teaching young people about the creating a business around podcasting. Sure. Is kind of the concept here. But he wrote this article kind of specifying out the 3 eras of podcasting, which is trying to say that, we're in these kind of like these different phases of podcasting's kind of growth and development. And I'll list his number 1, which is the MeUndies era, which was a little bit in the dawning days, it says.
The dawning days. Okay.
Is the MeUndies era. It said this first era was the golden age when podcasting was finding its rhythm. So the name of the game was authenticity, with baked-in ads forming the backbone of a monetization strategy. So keep in mind, everything that's being viewed here is being viewed from the lens of monetization, which is actually not an accurate portrayal of the early stages of podcasting. It was opposite of that.
Absolutely.
So you're kind of just taking this position that this is kind of like the first era of podcasting that was all about monetization and host endorsements and all stuff like that. It actually wasn't all
I
about
was
that
ridiculed and lost half of my audience when I announced a book deal. How dare you? How dare you take money for the art of podcasting?
You're a sellout. I got given all sorts of flack because I had a radio show back in that era, and I was running advertisements on my radio show, and they were making it into my podcast, and I was getting criticized for being a sellout. And there were people that were taking endorsements back then that were actually trashing their advertisers in their podcasts. Steve, is true that authenticity was the key thing.
It was authentic, all right.
Right. But what he's missing is the inverse orientation of an earlier era. So what I told Steve is there's actually 4 eras of podcasting. The first era was anti-commercial.
Big time.
Right. So, and then this next era, which is, I'm not sure what the MeUndies is really all about. I think it's
and actually, Rob, starting about 2005, early 2006, I had to beg shows, beg. I have an advertiser for you. I can get you monetized. We can make you substantial car payment money. No, I don't want any advertising. I had to beg shows to take advertising, and that lasted a while.
Yeah. And let's also be frank about it too. This MeUndies is a brand, right? That was an advertiser. And so I think what he's using that term is to describe that was the era of let's say Blue Apron and things like that, which is true. I mean, I think that there was a small amount of advertising that was being put into podcasting, and the kind of the date reference that he talks about in this one section, because he mentioned in October of 2014, Apple took the giant step of embedding its podcast app natively in all iPhones.
Right. That was an inflection point.
Well, it was an important inflection point, but I don't know that it was really at the root of any kind of era change.
No.
So, I think that, he's kind of missing because, let's be honest about, Steve wasn't around back then.
I will say that 2004 to 2008, 9 was the really high anti-advertising period. But around
anti-commercialism of anything.
And around 2009, what happened was some bigger shows came in. Adam Carolla and some others around that time, 8, 9 came in, where they were big, massive audiences that didn't exist prior to that, where all of a sudden then he's running 3, 4 ads, not very effectively either. Matter of fact, I can talk about a $20,000 ad deal that was run on a certain big show at the time that got goose eggs for results because the host actually kind of dogged the product while he was doing the host endorsement, and he got paid $20,000 for that. Whereas I knew what was going to happen, and I had asked the advertiser, I had begged the advertiser not to run the advertising in the show because I said, you're going to waste your money. I made them sign a waiver, said, I will not give you any make goods. You're not going to come back and not pay it. I'm advising against this. I had like a legal document that they signed. And then when they went and run that ad on that specific show, because of the way it was portrayed by the host, even though we had a great script, zero conversions. They still wrote me my $20,000. I paid the podcaster, but I was like, you didn't listen to me.
So, though I would say, Todd, this article, if it's taken from the perspective of the eras of podcast monetization, it's probably fairly accurate. But if he's talking about podcasting just in general, and as far as the title of the article, the 3 eras of podcasting, it doesn't say the 3 eras of podcast advertising.
Oh, I got you.
So that's where it kind of caught me a little bit off because, and so his second era.
Hold on a second. Tom says the first era was the pirate era.
Right. Well, which is fine too. I don't have a problem with that either.
Yeah, I think it's about right.
It's true as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that there is an era missing here, and believe me, I love the conversation of talking about trying to put the different eras in podcasting in their context. I think it's a great discussion because it's a way to kind of help new people to the medium to really understand how this medium has evolved. Because if they understand each of these eras, they will have a better contextual orientation to why the medium looks like it does today, right? Because there are aspects of the earlier eras even today. It's still there if you look at the medium from a viewpoint of historical knowledge. Most of the podcasting space is not monetized.
Right.
That takes you back to an earlier era.
Well, still the space is mostly non-monetized.
Non-monetized, right? And people don't always do podcasts just to make advertising.
I was in a meeting today. I can't say where, who, or with who. And they said if we implement this, and I can't talk about what they want to implement, this will bring the advertisers to the small shows. And I laughed. I laughed out loud. I literally laughed. And the Zoom meeting stopped. It was kind of like, why are you laughing? I said, I've been waiting for this for since literally 2008.
Right.
And you know how many times I've heard this?
Yeah. Well, it's a recurring theme. Yes. Yeah. And I don't know, Todd. I mean, I'm pretty open to this too. From the standpoint, I would love it that podcasters can make money from their shows.
Me too.
It's proven over the years to be just not something the medium really wants. I mean, it doesn't. Not everybody wants to make money from their shows like that.
Yeah, not everybody does.
And that's
those and about half of those that say they don't answer their email.
Right. Exactly. It just passes them right by.
I saw this deal come in, man. I said, the deadline on that was 21 days ago. Sorry.
Right. Okay. In the second era of podcasting, I want to clarify this, is the throwing spaghetti against the wall era, expansion and experimentation.
Oh, okay.
So this phase saw podcasting diversity expanded like never before. With the introduction of dynamic insertion, audio ads turned sophisticated. It wasn't just about placing an ad, but delivering it to the right listener at the right time. Big companies saw the potential and rushed in.
They still aren't getting it right.
Well, I hate to say, but dynamic ad insertion has been around podcasting since probably, I think Libsyn deployed it first back in like 2006.
Yeah, we were a few years later. I think I have to look at our timeline, but
right.
maybe 2008, 2009 or something like that.
Right. And I was working on pretty powerful dynamic ad insertion when I was working at Podcast One back in 2014. So, in some ways, his first era and his second era are kind of blending together because that's not really when dynamic ad insertion really took off.
The spaghetti phase really has happened multiple times.
Well, it's happened over the whole lifespan.
Well, it's been like Splat 2010, Splat 2012, Splat 2014.
Splat and fall off the wall.
Right. Yeah. The better way is chewing gum. Let's not use spaghetti. Let's throw chewing gum on the wall, and some stuck, some didn't, right?
Well, the problem is not that much stuck.
And some people went, came back, and have left again, or maybe the third time, some companies.
Yeah. So, I mean, maybe, Todd, I should write an era of podcasting article like this, and I'm sure it would be quite different than this.
Well, I'm sure I'd have fun tearing it apart too. I think
it's a fun story.
It is, and it's. I think it's. I keep calling it evolution.
It is.
I wanted to, early days, we're in a revolution, baby.
No,
it's never been a revolution. It's always been this evolution. And it's a
Adam Curry wanted to make it a revolution. He's the one that did the podcast talking about riding the rocket.
That was that still is one of the best openings trailers to a podcast ever. A matter of fact, Dave, if you're still listening, send me that if you can find that segment. I got.
That small clip where
I got so much strapped to my
to my ass, riding to the future.
That is still to me one of the best openers ever to any podcast that I've ever listened to. But I think that it's. I think what we are seeing though is that what big companies have found out. This is hard. It's hard work. It's hard to have compelling hits. It's just like, I think it's just like TV, and they try to make these hits and they spend a lot of money doing it, and some stick and some don't. And yet you have, people with, I look at it every day. I'm in my stats and I'm looking at our top 50, and it shows that you're doing 500,000 downloads or listens per listen. And, they've been around forever. They're not any top 200 lists, but yet they're consistently doing 500,000 and they're out there just rocking it. And it's just one lady or one guy, and they don't have a big budget. They just have compelling content.
Right. Yeah.
And
so
go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to jump to the third era of podcasting, which is what's a podcast era? So the visual paradigm shift. So it says, as achieving hits and durable titles became more challenging, podcasters focused attention on pushing and pulling more marketing levers to reach audiences.
Yeah.
Once a purely auditory experience, our medium has now stepped into the visual limelight.
I don't agree. It's not the limelight.
Well, it's totally missing the historical aspect of this. This whole video with podcasting is not new. It's not. People have been asking, "What's a podcast?" since it started.
Right.
And this blending between audio and video has always been with podcasting. It's only been less so because of the dominance of YouTube, but it's always been there. This shows an example of it.
Yeah.
we've been doing video podcasts. We've been doing video for years and years and years and years and years, way back in the first era
Right.
of podcasting. So I'm not saying that this show is necessarily indicative of the whole industry.
No.
I'm just saying that it's more like this video thing is more like a kind of like a renewed energy around video. It's not something new.
Yeah,
the only thing that's new about it is YouTube is actually embracing the idea.
And I'm actually kind of excited because we've actually got people interested in video podcasting again. For years we were the lone wolves. Tom goes on to say the early GoDaddy Audible days in the late 2000s were definitely spaghetti days. Well, I'm telling you for me it was Audible, GoDaddy, and Citrix GoToMeeting.
Right.
Without GoDaddy and without Citrix GoToMeeting, I would not be here. Blueberry would not be here.
Mm-hmm.
They carried us for, those early years, and I mean, literally, it carried the company, those two advertisers alone. And right back here, GoDaddy's still a sponsor of my tech show, and, knock on wood, thank God they renew every month. But it's, I still have to deliver. But at the same time, some of the stuff GoDaddy did back in some of those days with its prior owner, it wouldn't, that company wouldn't have survived in today's environment had something happened, what happened maybe 10 or more years ago happened today. They would lose their customer base like that. They'd be out of business because the times have changed. And, they were very smart finally to pivot and not be, how should we say it? So male, what's the word I want to use? I don't know.
Male dominant?
Yeah, well, they are now have a diversified message. They understand their customer base is much greater than just a bunch of male geeks. So,
well, that's how this medium started. To be honest, I'm not, I don't think any of us can look at the history of this medium. I mean, in order to be involved in this medium, it required you to be a geek. You couldn't start in this medium unless you had technical skills because there just weren't the tools there to do it. And that attracted, the people like us.
I wrote a kind of tongue-in-cheek article for Sonia for her upcoming release of her magazine. It basically kind of talks about the kind of a little bit of my history without really going into too much details. And I've probably forgotten more than I've, it's just, there's so many years behind us at this point. And it was kind of interesting to do that memory lane. I have a document that kind of has some dates and some, timelines and achievements and stuff like that I've kept over the years. But the evolution of this space, in some instances, we are no better off today than we were in 2004 or 2005. Right. What are we still challenged with? We're still challenged with, number one, growing shows. Mm-hmm. We're still challenged with helping podcasters that want to monetize
and to grow, right?
And those are still two of the main things that I deal with on a daily basis with podcasters. So even though
the discovery thing, Todd, that's what everybody's been talking about for like 20 years
even
now,
though we're 19 years later, almost at this point, not 20, almost 19 years later. Actually, we are at 19 years now.
We are. We're coming up on 20 here.
Yeah, and then my show's coming up on 19. October 9th will be 19 years for my personal show. But it is some of the same challenges we had even those early days. Now, granted, being early, there was some advantage there. But some of those listeners are still with me for 19 years, but 99% of them are not.
Are not, right.
So
they've moved on to other shows.
So it says, you had this great advantage of being early. Well, I had a great advantage early just to kind of build a show, but at the same point, to maintain a show and continue to grow and still have support and still have engagement, all these years later, that wasn't because I was early. Matter of fact, it's harder because I'm the old dude now, and so.
So this comment in the article too. Once a purely auditory experience, he's talking about podcasting, our medium has now stepped into the visual limelight. Well, Steve, I have to say, I was friends with some CEOs of some startup companies in the early days of this medium. One was called a Revision 3. One was called How Stuff Works.
Yep.
Which was acquired by the Discovery Channel, built their entire startup company, into a multi-million-dollar company on video podcasting.
Right.
And making that show available in YouTube as well as on an RSS feed.
Yep.
So, this is not a new phenomenon.
Right.
What we're seeing happen here. This happened in a very significant degree many years ago, probably from 2007 through probably, it started to decline because of YouTube's dominance to some degree, probably coming into 2014 or so.
Well, you look in that era of Revision 3, Twit, How Stuff Works, all that was right there, kind of in a line.
Huge programs. I mean, those were Ask a Ninja. Remember that series?
Yeah.
And those were huge programs, and they were extremely popular, and was really indicative of the kind of mirroring of podcasting between audio and video back in the era. I mean, I built a video podcast app inside a Windows Media Center back in 2010.
There's another show. Oh, I got to go over to the Podcast Awards and look at career winners to tell you they're still around, but they're primarily not necessarily a podcast anymore. It's a news. Oh man. As soon as I say it, people are going to know who it is. Let me go look and see if I can find their name in the history. But again, there's a whole bunch of examples.
Yeah, I think it's, I guess the bottom line of what I'm saying is that the history of podcasting is not easy to fit into specific eras, because there's a lot of things that have been tried in the past that failed, and that maybe are working now that maybe failed in the past. And so it's a very convoluted story is what it is. And it's very difficult to put it into buckets, because there's a lot of linkages with the past into the present. And that's why your comment about this being an evolution is really, I think, a better representation of what this medium has gone through. It's not distinct eras that have very distinct things that necessarily happen, because there's a lot of linkages between the past and the present.
I can't find this. I'm trying to dig through here. I know they won 1 year, and I'm just but again, I'm not going to dig on Steve too much, because
no, I'm not. I think it's just drawing clarity on. What I'm fearful is that people are going to get the wrong impression here about what the history of podcasting is.
But most people don't care.
Well,
they don't care what Todd and Rob think about the history of podcasting.
They don't, and that's exactly true. But I do think that people reading this article are typically newer people to the medium, and this is what they're going to think is what the history is and what the current present is. It's another line in here that's emphasizes the result of this is the lines between podcasts and visual shows are blurring.
And the majority know.
There is research that's showing that YouTube is becoming more prominent in the podcasting space, but is that a result of YouTube, or is that a result of podcasters?
I think it was Young Turks, 2012.
They were another one that built a very successful
and they were the year they won, they had in the Podcast Awards in 2012, I had Best Video Podcast. In 2011, it was This Week in Tech. In 2010, it was TED. TED was distributing stuff via podcast. So I only had that category starting in 2010. So look at this. TED won in 2010. 2011, This Week in Tech. 2012 was The Young Turks. 2013, Rob has a podcast.
Yep.
There was no awards on that I did in 2014. 2015, it was Night Attack. And then I think we dropped Best Video Podcast because it faded from popularity around 2015.
Well,
So I
dropped into YouTube more.
I dropped the video podcast category in 2015, and there hasn't been one since. But you look at Young Turks; they're still massive. They have a massive YouTube channel.
Right.
Just let me look. I'm 90% sure they're still.
In this conversation about what's a podcast, I think what is a more interesting conversation to have is that, well, what is the aspects of what's happening right now really, really a legitimate kind of like difference now between the past and the present.
See, look at these guys have got a 5.57 million subscribers on YouTube, but they started as a video podcast.
Long time ago.
Right.
Those guys have been around a long time.
Yeah, a long time. And I don't know how long they've had a YouTube channel. Probably from the very beginning, I would suspect, if I went into their history. So
that's what started to happen. I think it was probably back in 2013, 2012, something like that, where these media companies were starting to fork their content. They were making it available as a video podcast, but they were increasingly building their subscriber base and their audience on YouTube.
Just think if Revision 3, for some of those shows, there was, I can't remember who bought Revision 3, or did they?
The Discovery Channel bought those guys.
Now, most people, you don't hear too much about Loria anymore. But with certain personalities that shifted with that, that's one of the reasons why, the reason this show, I'll be honest with you, when I started video podcasting, I think on episode 600, which would have been about 2010, I think was when I started video podcasting. And I think that's about the time we started this show too. We'll have to go back and look because it was Saturday Morning Tech then. The only reason we did video podcasting and streamed live, and I think we were striving then on Ustream. I think that was the platform, and we moved to Blab and 2 or 3 others. And we could only do one stream at one time. We could only be on one platform. Was when I did my show in Hawaii, it was 8 p.m. Pacific. 8 p.m. Hawaiian, 11 p.m. Pacific, 2 a.m. Eastern. And then most of the people that watched the video podcast was coming in from Australia because they were awake. Everyone else was asleep. And I wanted some interaction. That was the only reason I did video. Why did I want to have people really kind of doing this, right? And then for me, it was purely for the interaction piece. It was just like right now, we got Ross, we got Tom in the YouTube chat right now, all making comments. And I wanted that interaction because I wasn't getting it from the audio podcast. I wasn't live audio streaming. So, and then when you and I started the Saturday Morning Tech, and I did the show at 6 a.m. or whatever ridiculous time we started when I was in Hawaii, 9 a.m. or whatever it was your time, and then switched that show to this show, which, we did on one show, we decided to change the name of the show. We did it because we wanted the interaction of the audience like we're getting right now.
No, that was a big reason.
Plus, Ross said the Young Turks had a channel on a now-defunct platform called Fire Talk in 2016 when I left Blab for Fire Talk. But yeah, the Young Turks were kicking in 2010. So Ross also says a lot of podcasters that have huge audiences for their YouTube version of the show, and they call them podcasts. That's where the focus on YouTube has come from. Yeah, it's probably true. Tom says, I can give you 3 eras. Well, Tom, what are those 3 eras? Ross also says, does the article get into all the ways podcasters monetize without running ads? No, I don't think so. I don't think it talks about affiliate links in the notes, promoting your own product and services, merch, Patreon. And again, there's this phenomenon known around affiliate things that, I've talked about in the show years past. I can I bet you I could do it today. I bet you I could replicate this. I can tell you, Ross, if I'm going to pay you $25 CPM to promote Red Bull, let's just say Red Bull. Let's say I'm going to pay you to promote Red Bull. And I tell Ross's twin, if there was such a thing, in
AI clone
in another dimension. If I told Ross's clone in the another dimension to have an affiliate deal with Red Bull, the CPM campaign would outperform the affiliate campaign by 10 times.
Mm-hmm.
Why? I don't know.
It just does.
It just does. It's true. I have hundreds of campaigns that, we just want to run affiliate. I'm like, no, it's going to fail.
Well, I think it's because the host has a little more passion for it because there's more of a commitment there on both parties.
The ads sound the same, and I don't know why they perform different.
Must be some reason, Todd.
There's something, some inflection in voice, some motive. There's something. If someone can unlock it, if someone can unlock that, we can make a lot of money. And you can go back in years past and find where I've said this before. I've said the same thing. There's something psychological that happens between affiliate and paid endorsement. I don't know.
Yeah. So do we think, Todd, that as you look out 2 or 3 years from now, so if I take the premise that Steve's coming up with here about this third era, right, of what's a podcast, right?
Sure.
I think he's probably
leaving the technical side aside.
Right.
Yeah.
I think from a practical perspective and a reality-based perspective, I do think that that question is being asked not as much because people really want to know the answer that's anything different than what they already perceive. It's more like there's this feeling that we need to expand what the term means. And it's not that people are asking, well, what's a podcast? I think most people know what a podcast is.
No,
it's just what we're faced with is people thinking that they need to think about podcasts as a much larger thing than it has been historically known for.
I think there's another dynamic here, and maybe what you're saying is maybe true from a psychological standpoint, but I also think that and I've heard this more than once, some podcasters think that I can't succeed and get big enough with audio to make money. I have to do video in order to get my audience big enough to succeed. And I'm sorry, but I believe that's a false premise. Good content, good executed, engaging content, whether it be audio or video, is going to succeed. I don't believe maybe you'll adapt the skills and the personality to have a better successful video podcast than you would an audio podcast. But if you are not succeeding as a audio podcaster, I would say first, before you make the jump to start doing video podcasts, and when I say it, I want you to do a real one, not one that's over on one of that other thing that we've been talking about and that we're streaming on right now. I want you to think about fundamentally, what are you doing with your show? Are you making it easier for your content to be found? Are you putting in the work doing show notes? Are you doing the social promotion? Are you sleeping, breathing, living this, building it 24/7?
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah.
If it isn't your second job, then don't complain if your show's not growing. And you may not be getting paid for your second job.
Yeah, I think the problem that happens is that people's expectations exceed the reality of what their experience will likely be. And that's one of the challenges.
I look at some of these super talented people out there and I'm amazed. And I try to think, how can I replicate? I can't, because their personality is their personality. You look at Howard Stern, love him or hate him. The guy is a master of an interviewer. You may not like his politics. Matter of fact, him and his wife are having a fight over the COVID thing. It doesn't matter. But he still is a master at doing interviews because he has a big team. They do great research. He has questions to ask that no one else has ever asked. So what is it to be a great podcaster? You got to do the research. You got to do the work. You got to put the time in.
Yeah, well, that's true.
And a lot of shows won't make it to 2 years. It takes 2 years for someone that is out. Rob, did you know me in 2004 before we started podcasting?
No.
No.
No, but I met you in 2005.
Right. Because what did I have? I had a
podcast.
I had a failed blog. I
didn't have a successful blog either.
I had a what's the word we want to use? I had a bird excrement a blog. I was not a good writer. Thank God for Grammarly today. Because if it wasn't Grammarly, when I took English in high school and college, man, I'm telling you, the red pen flowed.
Nice.
So, and I still destroy the English language. So we started the podcast. We were all together having fun, didn't know making up any rules, having a good time. We weren't worried about I wasn't worried about the money. I knew I spent a lot of money until I got home and, showed my wife the bills. She's like,
I wouldn't feel too bad about it because GPT-4 is torn apart by Grammarly too. So
right. But anyway, I got home and
too bad.
The money situation became a problem when I showed her. Well, I'm spending about $800 a month to keep this show on the line.
Right.
Well, you're what?
Yeah.
I had my own boat. Sinking $1,000 every month into the hobby at the time. People complain about their $20 hosting bill. So, I was given a limit. I said, she basically put her finger in my chest and said, you got 2 years, buddy. 2 years, up. 2 years to make money, or you're going to pull the plug on this train, So I was motivated.
Yeah, you were.
And when Wiley came calling with the book deal, I was like, yes, get out of jail, baby.
Saved by the book.
But what was funny was I spent every penny on that. Every penny that I got advanced, that $13,000 I got for doing the advance, I spent every penny on that, keeping the podcast online the first year.
Yeah. And getting all your gear and all that stuff.
Well, it wasn't, it was just the way it was, because it cost a lot. It's changing. But so now we have.
Yeah, I had my own servers co-located in co-location facilities.
So no one wants to hear any of this,
Right.
So,
right.
But there was people that were and you had to have money to be able to have your show online in those early days, because if you build any audience, oh my God. And
it cost you a fortune.
Then Libsyn showed up, and it was like the holy grail. No wonder Libsyn has these lifetime fans. It's because they save people thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars.
It was expensive to host a popular podcast back in those days. That's why I built my own servers and had my own co-location facilities, my own T1 connections, and all that stuff.
So now
it was cheaper to do that than it was to pay somebody else.
So now you don't have to worry about the money. You just got to worry about building great content.
Right. That's true.
And we were investing so much money. Guess what? Guess what we had to do? And maybe it made a difference. We had to build an audience. We had to.
Yeah, it was too expensive not to.
Had to build a big audience.
Yeah.
I remember a good friend of mine, when he started making more money than his job, he begged me. He said, do not ever say how much money I make. He was making over $100,000 a year very early, 2005, 2006. And he said, do not ever say how much money I make, because my boss will fire me. And he worked for a very, very big Fortune 50 company at the time. And he was one of the few that made big money in the early days, but he never announced how much money he made ever publicly, ever, right. And I don't know, we wandered all over the place here. I'm sorry if we've gotten too.
Yeah, Todd, I wanted to share it towards the end here. I wanted to share the news that came out, and I don't know if you saw this or not, but it appears that OpenAI is going to be integrating DALL-E 3 into ChatGPT. Did you see this?
When did that news pop? Today?
Actually, it's on their website. I can send you a link to it in the chat.
I'm not a big fan of DALL-E 3 yet.
Well, but you have to look at what the next version of it looks like.
Well, probably true.
Yeah. So I sent you a link to it in the meeting chat.
Yeah,
you can pull that up.
That's behind me. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
okay. It's open. It's at openai.com/DALL-E-3.
DAL-E-3.
3, right. And that shows you examples of what the new
it's
open.ai/DALL-E-3.
Oh, I don't. It came up 404. Let me just do this, and I'll Google it here.
OpenAI.com.
OpenAI.
Yeah.
Okay, hang on.
.com /
It'll find the story here.
Okay.
But
really, what stood out for me here was the visual output is going to be capable of embedding actually accurate English language into the image. So the ability to create episode art may be unlocked here.
Well, I've been doing pretty good with Midjourney, but I have been editing with Photoshop every time.
Yeah, you've been having to layer textual on top of it, right? Where this is going to have the ability to add it as part of the output.
So if the text has been challenging, so they're probably doing a trick here. You probably tell it what text to overlay.
Right.
So
totally.
that's good, and
yeah. Can you pull it up on the screen?
Yeah, this is what I found. This is probably not it, is it?
What's the address that you're at?
It's
there?
at open.ai.com research.
Oh, no, OpenAI, not open.ai. It's openai.com, not open.ai.
Hang on. I'm on the right site. I'm just not at the right URL.
Okay.
I hope this gets it. It still gives me 404 for that address. I can't find what you're talking about.
Oh, okay. I have it up in front of me. I mean, I can share my screen with you.
See here, maybe.
Help.
Okay, let me see if I see a bunch of people talking about it, but yeah, this is what I see. This is some of the stuff I see is.
Yeah, that's it there.
Okay. Well, we'll see. Again, if they're putting just numbers on jerseys and that kind of stuff, then time will tell.
Well, no, if you look at some of the images actually have text on them that's actually accurate.
Yeah, this is not the one from OpenAI because nobody wants a link to the original article. I don't know why I'm having such trouble getting over there. Well, let's try this.
My image is all messed up now because I shared.
Okay, I found it.
Okay. Yeah, so that image on the left there that you see right there.
Oh, I just feel so empty inside. That was that's cool. In a bubble.
Yeah, so that gives you a little bit of a clue of what this may be able to accomplish in the future here.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's big. And, it's news by the week. So we did have a couple of comments come in.
Unknown caller.
Oh, what was that?
My watch. Sorry. But I thought it was really interesting that this was getting integrated into ChatGPT. So if you have a paid plan, you'll be able to output images too. And my understanding is that the next version of ChatGPT will also be able to.
Yeah, I'd heard about that. About
upload
images.
Media to it as well. So like audio and video, and it'll do things.
3,330 sats from Mike Dell listening live on Podverse. 3,333 sats again from Mike Dell listening live on Podverse. Thanks for the double boost, Mike. You hit it twice.
Yeah.
Interesting. So it's what I'm finding is I actually just subscribed for Claude too. As well, I paid the $20 a month for that, and because I started noticing my outputs were getting smaller, and so it shows me that they're tightening down. They're not giving you as much text on a original query, and so I paid for it, and I'm getting a little bit more, but I won't say what we're doing internally, but boy, I tell you what, the API is a heck of a lot more. You can get a lot more output of via an API than you can just by doing raw queries. So,
yeah, because I've been trying to export transcripts from audio that I've been recording in various projects I'm working on, and if the transcript is too long, ChatGPT will choke on it, and they'll just say too much text, I can't parse it.
So this is where you have to use Claude, where you can attach a file and say, give me a summary and whatever other queries you're going to do. And if it doesn't give you, you have to really be aggressive with it and say, look at the entire transcript, summarize the entire transcript. Don't give me half, give me all. You have to almost talk to it like a little child. And then it'll give you half of it. And then you say, okay, continue. And it'll give you the next half of it. Or you may have to say continue 3 times. Now, does
that happen to ChatGPT as well?
Well, in ChatGPT, it's not as easy to attach files. So you have to use their contextual. Well, you can.
So you have to cut and paste.
No, you don't. You use the contextual editor. You use the advanced data analysis tool. You turn that on in settings, in ChatGPT, there's something called advanced data analysis. Now, it's typically used for it's more inclined to be used with spreadsheets and that kind of stuff. But I've tricked it to use transcripts as well. This is the advanced data analysis and it is 300 megs or something like that. So obviously a transcript won't. But this is where I was able to do data analysis on the Podcast Awards voting, was using advanced data analysis from a spreadsheet. Actually, I uploaded a CSV file that was very condensed. And so it's usually advanced data analysis is more inclined to be used for data. But text is data too. You just have to ask it nice.
So where do you find those?
It's in settings. You go over to your settings, but you do the little clipper, the hamburger on the left-hand side, and it says settings and beta. And then you go to beta features and you turn on advanced data analysis. Now again, your mileage is going to vary there, but again, I encourage you to use Claude. Claude is much better at looking at transcript text. Claude.ai.
I went to settings, and
then you'll see you look for beta.
Beta features.
Beta settings. You go to beta features. Yep, and then there's a little slide arrow there.
Okay, there it is.
It says advanced data analytics, and you can turn on plugins too. So plugins are some of the cool stuff to play around with.
All right. Yeah, I haven't played around with this stuff.
Yep, but we don't want to get we don't want to get into a full AI discussion already. We're already dropping people off on the live stream. But so Sony looks like they're pulling the plug or cutting.
Yeah, I was always a little surprised that Sony was that heavy into podcasting anyway, to be honest about it. It's kind of like Xbox being involved in podcasting. It didn't really make a lot of sense, but yeah, it's interesting that but I see that they're still hiring people. I saw that there was a job listing in Pod News for Sony Music for a podcast person, but yet they're in the news for laying off a significant percentage of their podcast division. So
it's it's too bad, to be honest with you. A lot of jobs going to be lost. Yeah. And they're canceling a celebrity podcast. So, course,
I wonder why they highlighted this one podcast in the article. It's almost like, because they have many shows. Why?
I don't
why
know how
they
many
would-
total shows do they have.
Well, they've been working on. I mean, they've had a pretty large team working on creating all sorts of different
Well,
kinds of
that's probably
podcasts.
because it's the biggest name in the. Of course, I don't pay
I
for
suppose.
Bloomberg, so I don't get the full news on this. I get the cutoff part here.
Yeah, I don't see that much of the article either.
But this is a third round. And it says, decision to cut staff and shows follows industry contraction. That's just it. It's not a contraction. Listeners are still here. That just means, you know what that means? Money, 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 money. Not as much money is coming into the space.
Yeah. Well, I guess you could say that that's a contraction if your focus is on making advertising revenue.
That's right.
And that's kind of the common theme of this show today is the retraction or the contraction or whatever word you want to describe what's going on in the podcasting industry is pretty isolated just to those that are involved in advertising.
So I had a interview with one of my most favorite podcasters. Erica and I had a podcast. We were on her podcast advertising playbook podcast. Mastering long-term advertiser relationships. We talked a little bit about that during the show. But I also...
are you talking about Heather also?
Heather, I'm sorry, not Heather. And not Erica,
okay.
Heather.
Yeah.
Sorry, Heather.
It's okay. I'm going to be on her show too.
And we had some interesting conversation, and there was a thing in there where I asked her, what can we do for you? And, I would just leave it out there. I'm going to let people go out there and listen. But it was interesting what she asked of me, someone that runs a hosting company. And, but we talked a little bit about the ad loads that we're hearing. And we've talked about it on this show about every 6.5 minutes and bam, you're hit with 2 ads that suck and driving me insane. And, talking about, keeping ads fresh and maybe why my show on Geekness Central where the ads aren't necessarily fresh and why they don't necessarily have to be. But we also had a great conversation pre-show. Let's see here. Let me see if I can paraphrase this here without getting too many people angry. Is it time, Rob, for the IEB standard to change to have the minimum play length be more than a minute? Should it move to 5 minutes before we count it as a download?
I think that may be too much.
What's the number?
Probably between 2 and 3 minutes max, probably would be my guess.
So my thought.
But that's just a random thought. It's not really based on looking at any kind of data or metrics, and because it does drive really that metric right there drives what a lot of the advertisers do. They want to have all their ads in the first minute.
Well, they don't all put all their ads in the first minute.
I know they don't, but I mean, if you look at the historical or aspect of this, pre-rolls has been.
I'm just going to play devil's advocate here. I know what we do at Blueberry, and I'm not going to go into.
It's early mid-roll, right?
Well, I'm just going to say that's the minimum requirement for counting a listen or a download. But do any of us really, as you as a podcaster, and you're thinking about it, thinking about the IEB spec and how they're counting plays and downloads today, should 1 minute be the minimum for a count, or should it be 3 minutes, like Rob said, or should it be 5? How much of that media file should be delivered before we say, yep, someone's actually listening, and we're going to count that as a play?
There's going to be a direct impact on the amount of revenue that a particular show would be able to make.
So
change it to 5 minutes.
Let me put on my bulletproof vest here, and put thumb on the scales a little bit and say, is 3 minutes something we should really be looking at?
I think it depends on.
I know what the math is. I'm not going to say what the math is. I know what the math is.
But if you put that requirement even at 3 to 5, you're going to cut the counting down probably by half, probably.
Well, that's interesting that you would say that.
Maybe.
Let's say it's 3 minutes.
Well, Todd, back up a little bit. Let's apply a little bit of context to this, because I think the historical orientation to this conversation has been that the download happens, and that's what we're counting is the download, right? But that comes out of an earlier era in podcasting, right, where people subscribed and the file got delivered to their media player, right? And we counted that as a download. Now people are just clicking play, right?
Sure.
They're not really subscribing.
In many instances, though, that player will grab a minute's worth of audio that quick.
Yeah, but is it counting what actually plays, or is it counting?
They don't know.
It was downloaded.
They don't know.
Right.
Still, they don't know.
Exactly, and that's
still the same problem.
Same problem.
Same problem. Because they don't have the client
still don't know
side
if they
data.
actually listened.
Right. They still don't know. 1 minute, 3 minutes, 5 minutes. You still don't know if they listen. Spotify knows. Apple knows. So let's say we take the 3 minutes. Would that potentially solve this issue that might be occurring with Apple querying 100 files at once and not only downloading 3? Oh. Oh. I'll leave it at that.
So. Does it?
I'm going to get shot. I'll just leave it there.
So
let's put it this way. Blueberry doesn't have a problem.
So say that again. So you're saying specifically in Apple, you're saying that when they will ping the RSS
when
feed.
Someone buys a new app or something gets screwed up or anything, and they Apple tries to download 100 episodes and they can't because it's not physically possible to do that at once, but it queries 100 at a time and it only downloads 2, and then tomorrow it'll try to download 98, and the next day keeps hitting it. So Blueberry doesn't have that issue. We don't have a counting issue because I overqualify media downloads. So Todd's thought is, are we doing too little? Are we measuring too little? Are we counting too early? And should we have a little more of a qualified delivery to count it instead of counting it 1 minute? Should we count it at 3 or 5?
I think you would have a better number of actual audience engagement the higher that number is.
So Drink with Rick says 1.5 minutes seems decent amount of time to count as a listener who is checking out a podcast to determine if they want to continue listening or not. That would count as a listen, though. Yes, it would. Today it would. But here's the thing. Majority of apps, when you are not subscribed and you click play, will probably download consistently more than just a minute.
Right. It depends on the speed of your connection.
And app, and they grab it in different chunks and sizes. So
because you're never going to have an accurate measurement if it's based on a download.
So I'll just leave this out here in the audience. As a podcaster, do you think we should have a higher standard for counting something as a play and listen than just 1 minute of delivery?
I know what people in the advertising side
That's
are going to tell
why I have my bulletproof vest on right now, Rob.
I think they would prefer that it gets count just at the point of clicking the button.
I think so.
Right. Yeah. Kind of probably what YouTube does. But what's interesting about what's different about YouTube is that they will give you playback duration, and it's a major factor in metrics of
Because
evaluating the success of a
they
program.
see all that. They see everything. They don't
Right.
count when I fall asleep, though. It's still playing. And
It's
it'll go
like
into
with this
the
show on YouTube. I can log in and see
Right.
what's how far are people listening
Hey,
into
please,
our show.
everyone, get on
Like 2
YouTube.
minutes.
Please, everyone, when they get ready to leave for the shh, we don't want to tell you this. But tomorrow, when you get ready to go to work, make sure you
At this point, nobody's really listening
click.
anyway, Todd.
Yes,
so.
they are. Click play. Click play on YouTube and then go to work. Actually, I think that's illegal to do. I could probably get banned off. Don't do that. Don't do
Right.
that.
Yeah, right.
Oh, funny.
I
Okay.
think we've gone way over.
Yeah, we have. We've went way over, but some juicy. Go listen to the podcast advertising playbook. Listen to the discussion Heather and I had. Link to her article, please. We appreciate it when you do that.
True
And-
Native Media is her company.
Yes, True Native Media. And
I'm
Rob,
going to be on her show here soon too.
yep, I've been on her show a couple of times. It was a great time.
Mhm.
Todd at Blueberry without the E's because we couldn't afford the E's, blueberry.com. At Geek News on X. I'm at Geek News, at geeknews.chat on Mastodon. You want to experiment with podcasting 2.0 and you're not a Blueberry, Buzzsprout, RSS.com, go over to podcastmirror.com. And if you want to see who has a standardized, who is all basically compliant, go to Podcast Standards Project. Just Google it, podcast, pspstandards.com or Podcast Standards Project. Google that and go look at those companies that have a certified compliant podcast RSS feed, and you'll see the list over there. So,
Doing a call with Charles in a day or so here.
wow, good.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll have something to talk about there.
Maybe.
Hint, hint, hint. So thank everyone for watching. I think we're back next week. I'll be heavy prepping for the podcast awards ceremony on the 27th, but the podcast awards ceremony is on the 30th. The votes are in. The tallying is going on, and fraud analysis is also taking place. But I think we have our winners.
So how has the voting been as far as total numbers?
We had
and
over
stuff?
8 million people participate in the nomination round. And then we did 22,500 in the final voting round, of which 82% voted for six shows or more.
Okay. Those are good numbers.
Yeah, good numbers. And voting was tight. It's unbelievable when it comes down to the end. How some stuff is 1 and 2 votes. It's crazy. So,
Wow. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
So we back again next Wednesday?
Yep,
Todd,
we're
or
back
you-
next Wednesday. Yep, hot and heavy.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
At some point, I got to go see my new grandbaby. At some point, I don't know if did you hear about that? I have a new
I did, yeah.
I have a new granddaughter.
Congratulations.
So
Right.
at some point, I got to go out to Washington, Washington, and cuddle that little one at some point soon.
I've got to go out to Seattle at some point here in October myself.
Oh,
so-
well, let me know so maybe we can coordinate so we're both gone.
Okay.
All right, everyone. Thanks for being here, and thanks for the chit chat in YouTube. And the Facebook folks were quiet today, but all the action was on YouTube. Thanks for Tom Ross, Drink with Rick. Who else was in here today? A few others that came in and chatted in YouTube. Thanks so much. All right, buddy.
All right.
Let's see you next
Thanks,
time.
everybody.
Yep. Bye.
Yeah. Bye.